you love a news at Prime, it's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. I'm Kathy Mutlatlana. Plenty of news that we'll cover in the next 2 hours. We'll kick it off with this developing story. Reports tonight suggesting that the extradition hearings of Atul and Rajesh Gupta won't be open to the public. It comes after the alleged state-captured kingpins were arrested in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates earlier this month. It's on fraud and money laundering charges, at least that's as far as we know. While the ongoing efforts to extradite the pair continue, we're joined tonight by the Justice Minister Ronald Lamola on the latest there. Minister Lamola, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Your department is effectively in a race against the clock. It's just 60 days that you have to complete this process. Talk to us about where you are in the process right now.
Good evening, Kathy, and to the viewers. Indeed, the NPA has submitted the provisional arrest to the authorities in the UAE through diplomatic channels, and they are now expected to provide us with the extradition request within the 30 days period as provided for in the extradition treaty between the UAE and South Africa. And that is where we are awaiting that request. And we will then, through our central authority, which is the Department of Justice in South Africa, forward it to our counterparts through diplomatic channels in the UAE, which is the Minister of Justice also in the UAE, who is also the central authority. It will then go through the court processes of the UAE, where the matter will be heard to decide whether they are extraditable or not. And after that, then if a decision is made that they are extraditable, the Minister of Justice in the UAE will then take a decision on the finality of the court processes to extradite them to South Africa.
So we're still in very much the early phases of this process. What charges are contained in those papers? What charges have they been arrested on?
Yes, we are indeed in the early stages of the process, and as you are aware, with regard to what they've been arrested for, they were arrested on the Interpol Red Notice, which came through the ID, the Investigative Directorate, and I'm not at liberty to disclose the issues of the charges, but a notice was issued, and this notice was issued to all country member states across the globe who are members of Interpol, who had an obligation, if the suspect were in their country, to arrest them. So it is a pleasure that they've now been arrested in the UAE. We know for sure, with certainty, that they are now in the UAE. Hence, now the treaty gives that opportunity to say when a person is arrested, you have got 60 days within which to submit the extradition request. It's because when you issue the red notice, you don't know where these people will be arrested. They can be arrested in Brazil, in China, or in India. So that 60 days, it's some kind of a leeway that then gives you an opportunity to deal with your papers in line with the extradition agreement with that particular country. And that is what is happening.
Why can't you tell us about the nature of charges that they're facing?
It's because that is a terrain of the National Prosecuting Authority. As you are aware, our role is to convey and play a diplomatic engagement between ourselves and the central authority in the UAE, and the people dealing with the charges, the evidence and everything is the NPA. And even in this regard, they are the one currently compiling the papers. Our obligation will be to ensure that the papers are in line with the extradition treaty as we take them to the UAE.
So what does that mean? Does it mean that what is going to be contained in your official application to have them extradited back to South Africa will be different to what was contained in the Interpol notice? Because part of what's been reported on is that the Interpol notice centered largely on fraud and money laundering charges, and that was related largely to that Nulani investment scam that is related to the Estina Dairy project in the Free State.
Yeah, that is for the NPA to decide whether they will want to expand on what they have submitted in terms of the extradition treaty, which allows them to bring whatever they believe is an extraditable conduct into the process, and that is within their rights. Our responsibility is that when they do provide us with the request, it is in compliance with the extradition treaty. It has some kind of a relay effect where the authorities now it is some kind of an international relations exercise when it is an exchange between the Minister of Justice in South Africa and the Minister of Justice in the UAE, who is a central authority. He will also take it through their own prosecuting authority in the UAE and also ensure that it goes through the court processes of the UAE.
Of course, the big challenge here is that the question is about what are the cases that the South African government feels it can secure convictions on when where it relates to this arrest of the Gupta brothers. And that's what I'm really trying to get out of you, Minister, tonight. That what are the cases effectively that you believe that you will be able to secure successful convictions on?
At the stage of extradition request is not about conviction. It is about the conduct, the extraditable conduct that the authorities will want to put as a request. And in that regard, the NPA, it is within the extradition treaty for them to compile what they believe is an extraditable conduct in terms of the charges, which they must submit to the authorities to us, and then will submit to the UAE. And the issue of a conviction is now a part of a court process. And you cannot sit here and pronounce that there will be a conviction. What, in terms of our law, they need the NPA to have a prima facie case. They must be convinced that they can be able to prove in our courts beyond reasonable doubt. And as you are aware, our courts always guarantee a fair trial to any accused person, whether South African or anyone.
Fair enough, but you're not going to charge people where you don't have a belief that you are going to be able to secure a conviction. Whether or not that takes place is, of course, in the hands of the court.
That is for, as I've said, that is for the NPA to be able to say they believe they've got a case that they can prove beyond reasonable doubt in our courts of law. Our responsibility is also to ensure that the processes are fair to all the parties and everyone is given a fair hearing and in line with our constitution.
Part of the reason why I'm asking the questions that I am is because my understanding is that once they have been extradited to South Africa, so once the process has been complete, when they are here, you will not be able to add to the charge sheet, and so you have to prosecute them on the charges under which they've been extradited.
Yes, that is correct. Hence I'm saying, in terms of the NPA, they have to provide what they believe is an extraditable conduct. And I've said the extradition treaty allows for them to provide whatever charges that they believe is an extraditable conduct, that they believe they can try them here in this country, and they can be able to prove in court beyond any reasonable doubt.
Are you getting a brief on what some of those cases might be, what some of those specific cases might be?
Yeah, obviously, as they provide us the information, they have to inform us what are the charges and what is the matter. But obviously, in terms of the facts and the evidence, that still remains the terrain of the
So what NPA. Are some of those matters?
No, unfortunately, I can't disclose those kind of issues. It's an issue that will have to follow the diplomatic processes and the court process.
So when can the public expect to know the specificities? Because again, there's the impression is that this case is not going to be held in open court. So what are we going to do in terms of transparency?
It is transparent. I mean, we have informed the public that indeed we have been informed by the authorities in the UAE that they've been arrested. And we have also coming here to you to account.
But you're not telling us about what charges they face?
Yeah, it's because there are sensitivities that we are not yet ready to disclose to you.
What are those sensitivities?
We will want to, obviously, this involves processes of the courts. It involves diplomatic processes. There's still a lot of issues that needs to be resolved on the matter. And I think when the NPA they are ready, at the right time, they will be able to take society into confidence upon submission of the extradition request, and to the extent that they believe is necessary and also permissible and allowed within the limits, they will be able to tell society that these are the charges that they believe they are going to face when they come here.
When are you expecting that the NPA will finalize its extradition application?
Yeah, as I've said, they've got 60 days to do so, but they have committed that they want to do it within a reasonable time before that 60 days. And I do believe that they will be able to do so.
When you look at the challenges that are likely to face South African officials in this process, what do you think are going to be some of perhaps the three big ones for you? Because already we understand that the brothers have been beefing up their legal teams and will be trying by all means to avoid ending up in this country.
Yeah, what I can say, Kathy, is that extradition, by its very nature, can be a protracted legal process. Even here in our country, we deal with a lot of extradition matters that comes to me. They become protracted in our own courts, and there are lots of challenges, appeals to the higher courts and all that. But at the end, when the final court has made a decision, I have to make a decision whether to extradite the person or not. So those are the intricate details that comes with the extradition process. And if you look at the Mr. Shipililo Gama matter, well known as Shepherd Bushiri, already there has been an appeal where we lost a matter in the magistrate court in Malawi. It went to the High Court in Malawi where we succeeded. It is now back in the magistrate court. It will be heard during the course of next week or this week. And so those are the intricate kind of protracted process that comes with the litigation process. But at the end, when there is finality by the court, it is now a process that is left to the central authority to execute the task of extradition.
Let's talk about the bail application that is coming up soon. Are you worried about the brothers being granted bail?
No, with the bail application, obviously they will have to communicate the central authority and also the law enforcement agency, what could be the equivalent of the NPA in South Africa. They will communicate with the NPA. What is the view of the NPA with regards to bail? They will then agree whether they oppose the bail or they do not oppose the bail.
But what is the position of the South African government? Have you been lobbying them to oppose bail?
Obviously, the NPA, as I think that is what we need to clarify, is not is the NPA and the NPA of the UAE will agree whether they want to oppose the bill or they are not opposing. And the NPA will be able to tell South Africans whether they've decided that they want to oppose the bill and they want the authorities that oppose the bill or not. So it is still that process that has to unfold.
It sounds like you are having to work very closely with the authorities in the UAE, and I don't know if I'm reaching here, but that you don't want to be stepping on anybody's toes.
No, it's not stepping on anybody's toes or not wanting to step on anybody's toes. It's to ensure that the process, as it unfolds, it is not contaminated by any unnecessary, what could I say, ulterior motives. It must be informed by the law. The NPA Act, the Central Authority, the Extradition Act of our country, and also be informed by the extradition treaty between the UAE and South Africa. And whatever that you are asking me will be ventilated in those courts in the UAE. It will also be ventilated in our courts. So it is important that we are compliant with the treaty.
Will you be making sure that, at least in as far as the court processes are concerned and the court hearings, where the charges also that will be read out to the brothers in the UAE, that those court processes are made public?
Yeah, obviously it will be governed by the law of the UAE in this regard. If there is an extradition hearing, for example, here in South Africa, it's governed by the Extradition Act in South Africa and also by our own laws. So even this one, it will be governed by the laws of the UAE, and we have to respect the laws of that country.
Are you at the UAE's mercy here?
No, we are not at the UAE's mercy, because as the extradition process, it's a policy-centric and political diplomatic process across the globe. We do it ourselves. We get requests. We decide whether we extradite or not. The USA, if we have a request, we do every day. I deal with countries, jurisdictions across the globe. And we also have a responsibility to reciprocate to the UAE. They also have an obligation to reciprocate to us. And from time to time, we help them with mutual legal assistance. They help us with the extradition request. And I can confirm that the relations has been very good. They've been cooperating with us. And even on this matter, we have been working very well with them. I think also the signing of the treaty was the clear indication from both countries of the mutual respect and the mutual cooperation that exists.
Minister, I don't know if you're going to have an answer for me, given how intricate you say all of these processes are, but when are we expecting the Guptas in South Africa? Is there any time frame that the department is working on now?
No, there is no time frame. As I've said, extradition can be a protracted legal process. It may take time, but they will definitely come back.
All right. I want to switch gear slightly and go back to a case that has really gripped the imagination of South Africans, and that's the Senzo Mewa trial. This last week, one of the big conversations in that trial has been around this issue of dockets and the surfacing of, you know, not now servicing, but the debate around this second docket that was put together as a, you know, that contributed to the state's case in that matter. And for all intents and purposes, the state seems to have handled the issue of the second docket very badly. What have you, as the Justice Minister, known about this case?
Now, I will not want to comment on this case, Kathy, because it is currently in court. And as you are saying, you have viewed it, it's in a public domain and a public platform. It is now in the hands of the judge. So I have to respect the process that the judge is undertaking.
Are you concerned about the state drawing scrutiny, at least for the lack of being able to put its things together in time, and also in terms of following due court process where suspects don't feel that their constitutional rights have been trampled on?
As I've said, it's the same question. I'm not going to comment because the matter is now before court. It is now in the hands of the judge. So we will have to allow the case to have its own life and allow the processes of the courts to unfold. If there is a need for us to comment, we will look at the judgment at the end of the case. But for now, we have to respect the processes, because anything that we might say might be seen or might affect the processes of the hearing. And we think that a fair trial is important for any person.
Fair enough. There's now talk by some legal commentators that given the issues of procedure here, it wouldn't be completely unexpected for some of the lawyers of the suspects to then ask and call for a mistrial and ultimately have this, you know, case thrown out of court. That would be devastating for the Mewa family. Are you watching these proceedings concerned about things getting there at all?
Yeah, obviously that also will have to be left to the judge to decide. As it is in the court process, the arguments will be made by the parties. The judge is there to deal precisely with such issues, to make determination on the facts and the law in front of him. He's better positioned, and I think we should allow and give the case a life of its own to run its course.
Fair enough. Justice Minister Ronald Lamola, let me thank you so much for coming into studio tonight. And that's where we'll leave it for now.